Good evening and welcome to the Ravenswood City School District regular meeting for March 13, 2025. The board meeting is called to order at 6:05 p.m. I will now go into item 1, which is roll call. Trustee Bloom,
Here.
Trustee Latu,
Present.
Trustee Shabowahin, Trustee Nunez, and I myself, Samuel Tavera, President. We have quorum. I will now move into item number 2, approval of the agenda. Do we have any questions or comments regarding the agenda?
Through the chair, I would like to pull item 9A from the consent agenda.
Okay, do we have a motion to approve the agenda pulling 9A?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda pulling 9A.
I will second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Votes are 3-0. I will now move into item number 3, which is a consideration to approve the proclamation resolution number SY 25-23, which is the National Developmental Disabilities Awareness Month, which is March 1st through the 31st, 2025. I will entertain a motion to approve proclamation resolution number SY 25-23.
Through the chair, I move to approve proclamation number SY 2523 recognizing March as National Development Disabilities Awareness Month.
I will second.
And we have readers.
My name is Anthony Byers. My students know me as Mr. B. I'm a unique teacher at CCRMS Middle School. I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Whereas during the 1950s and 60s, the federal government, with strong support and advocacy of family associations, began to develop and validate practices for children with disabilities and their families. Previously, these children were denied access to services and education and often placed in restrictive and inhumane conditions in state-run, overcrowded institutions. Parents of children with disabilities demanded that attention to the needs of their children be recognized. And whereas on November 29, 1975, President Gerald Ford signed into law Education for All Handicapped Children's Act, or the EHA. The EHA guaranteed a free, appropriate public education, or FAPE, in every state and locality across the country and later turned into the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, in 1990. This transition expanded eligibility criteria, introduced early intervention services, strengthened parental rights, and enhanced support for students through individualized education and transition planning. Whereas in 1987, President Reagan proclaimed March as National Developmental Disability Awareness Month to make certain that people with intellectual and developmental disabilities had access to work, contribute, and enjoy meaningful lives that are driven by their choices.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mrs. Harrison, and I am the lower unique teacher at Costaño. I teach TK 1st and 2nd grade this year. Here, whereas in 1990, President Bush signed the Americans with Disability Act, ADA, which was amended again to ensure the goals of independence, integration, and productivity towards independence, inclusion, and recognition of individual contributions were realized. And whereas the Ravenswood City School District acknowledges the intersectionality of disability with all other forms of discrimination and will strive to provide instruction in disability, history, and the disability rights movement to enhance the understanding of disability by incorporating social, cultural, historical, and legal perspectives, including the connections between disability and other identities. Disability is a human experience, not an exception, and whereas the Ravenswood City School District is committed to providing exceptional support and education to its 312 students across various schools. This includes 50 students at Bellhaven Elementary, 84 students at Cesar Chavez Ravenswood Middle School, 68 students at Costaño School of the Arts, 30 students at Los Robles Ronald McNair Academy, and 80 in preschool programs. And whereas throughout the National Association of Councils of Developmental Disabilities, NACDD, DDAM 2025 seeks to highlight the challenges and achievements of people with developmental disabilities, promoting inclusion and advocacy. The NACDD has adopted the color orange as the official color of DDAM, symbolizing energy and positivity. And now, therefore, be resolved by the Governing Board of the Ravenswood City School District understands its responsibility to recognize March 2025 as National Developmental Disability Awareness Month and strives to honor and include all people with disabilities and consistently promote and foster inclusive, safe, welcoming environments for all. And
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0.
Through the chair.
Yes, I just want to extend my gratitude to Anthony and Isis. I think also maybe Maria Otadoy is here. There she is. Maria Otadoy is a teacher at Bellhaven, and she also has multiple credentials to be able to support where there is always a need, whether it's moderate to severe, SLP, and there's a couple other credentials you hold, Miss Maria, as you've been with us in the district, providing supports for our students who are our most vulnerable students. However, specifically in the classes where we have students with moderate to severe needs, these two educators ensure that they literally are treated with dignity, have voices in the spaces, utilize the support staff in the room to ensure the kids get the care and instruction. Our students can still learn life skills and other academic areas that they're capable of achieving. And there is no limitation to that. And you provide confidence to our families that our students are cared for. Oftentimes when we do walkthroughs, we may not consider going into our special education classrooms. These special education classrooms are worthy of going into. All special education classrooms are worthy of going into, and they remind me every day, we are not looking at only students to meet standard, we are looking at students to reach their full potential, all students. So I appreciate Maria, Anthony, and Isis for what you do and the representation that you provide for the rest of our special education team members.
All right, thank you. Now we will move into item number 4, which is a consideration to approve the proclamation resolution number SY 25-24, National Women's History Month, March 1st through the 31st of 2025. I will entertain a motion to approve proclamation resolution number SY 25-24.
I'll make a motion to approve proclamation resolution SY 2524, National Women's History Month.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. I'll read the proclamation.
Thank you.
Whereas Women's History Month began as a local celebration in Santa Rosa, California, for 1 week when the Education Task Force of the Sonoma County Commission on the Status of Women first planned and executed a Women History Week celebration in 1978. Whereas in 1980, a consortium of women's groups and historians led by the National Women's History Project, now the National Women's History Alliance, successfully lobbied for national recognition. In February 1980, President Carter issued the first presidential proclamation declaring the week of March 8, 1980 as National Women's History Week. Whereas 6 years after Carter's proclamation, Congress, at the urging of the National Women's History Project, declared March of each year to be Women's History Month. Whereas the National Women's History Month's theme for 2025 celebrates women who advocate for equity, diversity, and inclusion, the theme recognizes women throughout the country who understand that for a positive future, we need to eliminate bias and discrimination entirely from our lives and institutions. Whereas women of every race, class, and ethnic background throughout our history have, despite hardship, exclusion, and discrimination, strived and sacrificed for equity and equality in communities across the country and have served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement. Whereas National Women's History Month honors and celebrates the struggles and achievements of American women throughout the history of the United States. And
Whereas suffragists helped pass the 19th Amendment to the Constitution so that no Americans could be denied a vote on the basis of sex. Women fought to end slavery, advocate for civil rights, and pass the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Equal Rights Amendment originally approved by Congress in 1972. Generations of women continue to lead the fight for climate justice. Whereas standing on the shoulders of the women who came before them, today's women and girls continue to carry forward the mission of ensuring our daughters have the same opportunities as our sons. Women are leading the fight for justice, opportunity, and equality, and continue to lead groundbreaking civil rights movements for social justice and freedom. Whereas American women have played and continue to play critical political, economic, cultural, and social roles in every sphere of life by constituting a significant portion of the labor force, and American women have played a unique role throughout the history of the nation by providing the majority of the volunteer labor force of the nation. Whereas American women were particularly important in the establishment of the early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our nation, additionally, women have been instrumental in the fields of science, the arts, and athletics. Whereas Ravenswood City School District and our communities also recognize the importance of understanding women's history and sharing it with our students, particularly with regard to honoring the significant and long-standing contributions women have made in this country, in California, and in our local community. Whereas, despite the advancement of women in the United States, much remains to be done to ensure that women realize their full potential as equal members of society. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Governing Board of the Ravenswood City School District that the district takes great pleasure in recognizing March 2025 as National Women's History Month and urges all citizens, staff, and students to join in celebrating the accomplishments and persistence of women everywhere.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-0. I will now move into item number 5, which is to move into a closed session. Do we have any members of the public that would like to address anything that is agendized for closed session? All right. As I see none, I will adjourn to closed session at 6:18 p.m. Welcome back. We'll reconvene open session at 7 p.m. I want to report back from action taken in closed session. For item 5A, there was discussion and no action taken. For item 5A1, there was discussion and action taken 3-0. And now I will move to item number 8 from the floor. Do we have any members from the public that would like to address anything that is not agendized? No? All right, as I see none, then I will move on. We'll move on to item number 9, which is the consent agenda. And I want to remind everyone that we pulled item 9A. So I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda with 9A pulled.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carry, all opposed? All right, motion carries 3-0. All right, I will now move into item number 10, which is board reports and communications.
Through the chair, I just want to say that I attended virtually on Zoom the Menlo Park City Council meeting on Wednesday night. Is that Wednesday? Tuesday night into early Wednesday morning. And Alliant, the developer who is developing the affordable housing project on the old flood school site, that was going back to the city council because there was an appeal filed, but it had passed from the council and the planning commission, and it went back to the council, and the council denied the appeal 4-0 and 1 absent. And it was great because that means that things can continue to move forward for our developer to develop and build the affordable housing at the flood school site. So I'm excited to see that moving forward.
I have a board report. It's good to be back. I've been gone a couple of weeks due to some health issues, but I am happy to be back in this seat and will continue to work hard to better ensure our district continues to move forward. Thank you.
And thank you for that. I just want to share that Bellhaven this week is hosting, Bellhaven Elementary School is hosting spring conferences. Tomorrow, which I have a scheduled conference with my daughter's TK's teacher, so me and my wife will be there, which we look very forward to. Yeah. I will then move now to item number 11, which is the Ravenswood Promise Community Action Plan presentation.
All right. Good evening, trustees. I'm excited to be here tonight to share with you all our Ravenswood Promise Community Action Plan. We'll share a little bit about the journey that our community has gone on to get to this point, what a community action plan is, and how we will use it to bring our Ravenswood Promise to life. So as a quick reminder, over the last 18 plus months at this point, our entire community has come together to define the Ravenswood Promise, which is both a shared vision of what we want to be true for students, as well as an action plan to get us there. We are so thrilled and grateful to the over 1,000 community members, including our incredible students who have contributed to this effort. Our shared vision is in the form of this learner profile, which you all know because we share it in every board presentation. But this is what we want to be true for all students when they leave Ravenswood schools. And based on where we are today and that shared vision of where we want students to be, we've grounded as a district in 3 priority areas, which have been identified through our community input, as well as informed by our data. The community action plan is really about having a physical testament to the journey that we are taking as a community. We have a shared vision now and aligned priorities, and we've laid the foundation for transformation. This plan, which you should have in front of you now, Superintendent Sudaria will help us pass it out, and will be made public online as well soon. It tells the story of where we started as a district, where we want to go, and how we plan to get there together. This journey takes place over 5 phases of work. First, we had to reckon with the reality that our students are not where we want them to be today. Through dozens of community interviews and a hard look at our data, we began to bring together a coalition that would kick off our Ravenswood Promise journey. Then we assembled a vision team of folks across the community that came together to define what we want to be true for students. Through a series of working sessions, including with many of our amazing student leaders and research from other successful districts, we created what we now know as the learner profile. From there, we narrowed in on our 3 priorities, from doing promise walks at our schools, root cause analysis of our data, and gathering even more community input. And that's how we now have our focus on language and literacy, attendance, and talent district-wide. But to make our vision even more concrete, we knew we had to have a roadmap for transformation. And so we set specific and measurable goals for each of our 3 priority areas. And now we are doing the work of making the change together as one community. And we are already beginning to see some early wins with improvement in attendance and in foundational literacy compared to this time last year. Our community action plan is something that I think we celebrate because it is a work in progress. It's not just a presentation that we give one time only to never look at it again. While it does celebrate our past, and it's an artifact of the work that's gone on in this journey so far, with photos and quotes and some of the data of our progress, it's also a living document that's going to shape what we do moving forward. And it's something we'll continue to reference and refine in the years to come. And to me, one of the most exciting pieces of the community action plan is our roadmap of really focused, specific, and measurable goals. Working backwards from our vision of our promise to students, our action teams have come together to set 10-year, 3-year, and 1-year goals that'll get us to where we want to be. These goals represent the collective work of our home office staff, our school leaders, as well as all of the community members who have joined our public working sessions. And they're grounded in evidence-based practices and benchmarks from districts who have made this change happen. So we know that the Ravenswood Promise is possible. As we look ahead to our future, we know we have to focus on what we can do right now. And as Superintendent Sudaria actually recently just said in a fabulous speech this week, dreams don't just happen by accident. We know we have to build them together. And so we're really excited that for each of our goals, we're already starting to take action and track key results this school year to achieve the goals that we've set for the end of next school year and beyond. So as an example, and I'll let you all read through this on your own time, but looking at our language and literacy priority, one of our goals is around grade level proficiency in reading across all of our students. And so to do that, by the end of next year, we're focusing on curriculum adoption and foundational literacy mastery this school year. And these are the kinds of key results that will show us we're on track to make the growth we want to see. As we look ahead to implementation, We are going to continue to build on the successes of our journey so far. Our leaders and our educators are ensuring that their goal setting and their planning and action steps are aligned to this shared vision and North Star. We're building really strong data infrastructure so that we can monitor and share our progress, so that we can make real-time adjustments based on what we're seeing, and so that as a community, we can hold each other accountable to these goals. And of course, we're going to continue to partner deeply and authentically with our families and our broader community, because we know that bringing a promise to life takes a team effort. So in that spirit, we hope that all of you and our entire Ravenswood community will join us on April 2nd for a celebration of the Community Action Plan, a little launch party, if you will, and that everyone can come together as families, community partners, educators, district leaders, to just learn more about how we're building a better future for Ravenswood students together. So families will get a chance to talk to a literacy coach or a reading interventionist or an outreach coordinator who's doing attendance initiatives, and learn more about the work that's happening in the district and what they can do to support. We're gonna have food, and we're gonna have prizes. And if the weather and construction gods are in our favor, we might even get to take a sneak peek at some of the new outdoor facilities at the middle school. So really hope to see everyone there. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any questions or comments from the board?
Through the chair, I have a comment. In 2020, when I first joined the board, we struggled to show proof of the updates that were happening within our districts. I wouldn't say we failed. I would just say that we were lacking in a lot of areas. Capturing stories and compiling it in a way that our community receives it. And I believe that, after 4.5 years, 5 years now, of rebranding and continuing to have these compassionate conversations, we have a lot to show for it. And so thank you to the team for this great presentation. I'm really excited that, something that we've highlighted before as a board has finally come into fruition. So I'm very happy about that. So thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair. Thank you, Joy. I know you've been spearheading this work, and just everyone in the district that's been involved being at the different meetings. I haven't even been to all of them, just a few of them. And it's just been so exciting to see the excitement there, and just people really engaging and talking about the promise and how we're going to make it happen. And so thank you for the work that you've done. And I did not get to say during my board report, which I wanted to, which you mentioned. So you gave me the segue of quoting Gina, and I assume it's from yesterday, because our superintendent, received an award from TFA, Teach for America. So I also want to say congratulations to our superintendent. And I know a lot of the work that you are doing in leading our district, not only from the staff, but to the students and being engaged in the classroom. I do appreciate that as well. And just want to say it does show in these pictures, in the words that we're seeing. And so I'm just really excited to have this very clear vision and goals. And when you were like, oh, we have a 10-year plan and I was like, oh, where is that? I want to read that. So it's just really exciting to be able to have it and to be able to share with others and say, this is how we're making it happen. And we have something that we're holding ourselves accountable for. That's not just data that's from the year before. So thank you so much for all the work that everybody in this room has been part of and has really invested in and signed on to and is sharing with our communities and our school communities. So thank you so much.
And I just want to echo, I think when I was going through this, I think I've heard it said many times that former superintendent, this is our North Star, this is our compass, this is our guiding us. And so when I was going through the presentation and seeing how we can project going 10 years and just sitting here thinking like, I have a 4-year-old, and I have a almost 2-year-old, thinking that 10 years from now, my daughter's gonna be 14. I'm probably just thinking about that. It's ridiculous how times, I still think about when I brought her home, from the hospital, and my son is turning 2, and so But having this North Star, this, keeping us accountable for guiding us and, holding us accountable for just driving the work that we're doing, 10 years down the road, and I think it will keep us motivated, to keep us passionate about the work that we're doing. So that if for whatever reason, we fall off or whatever, we can say, oh, look, let's get back on track because this is a roadmap. Let's keep going. So thank you for that. And then also I just want to echo what Melly mentioned, the successes, and we have a lot of great things that we can share. I was seeing some of the videos that were like on our YouTube channel with district, and I saw some of those videos that I saw you and Joy and the superintendent that's been highlighting this, and so more of that. So yes, thank you for all the work that's been doing. Yes, thank you.
Through the chair, to what you were speaking about with your child who is a TK student, we did think about, if you look on page 16, where we're looking at the roadmap, it is by the time TK students leave kindergarten next year. And then the 10 years from now is by the time TK students leave 8th grade. That's how quick time flies, as you mentioned, but that's how important it is that we start in TK and get them prepared and have the foundation to be successful in Ravenswood moving forward. So there's no delay in instruction around foundational literacy skills, and the importance of teaching to standard and being rigorous from the very beginning, joyful and rigorous, with our instructional program in Ravenswood. And the importance of TK students coming to school every day as well. One more comment, and that goes to what Trustee Latu was sharing about. In the past, we did not have a mechanism to track our progress towards our strategic goals. This community action plan was created with the intention of it being accessible to all community partners, families, students, governance team, educators, to be able to understand and see how we are doing. And so the team is creating a dashboard that will be public. It will measure how many times a teacher gets feedback from a site principal or a coach. It will measure the progress of our mastery tests for how our students are passing in the intervention program. It will continue to measure our attendance. It also has metrics for our talent initiative. And it's going to hold us accountable. And it's important that, and the reason why, we must be aligned from school site through the home office. And anything extra is only to enhance. It can't distract what we're doing.
And through the chair, just to add to that, historically, our district has always had a story told about it based on a state test that usually only happens once a year. And what we saw was just these outside stories that just aren't true. And so I feel like we have a lot of power in our narrative and what we want people to see, because we have a right, well, the community has a right to demand a high quality of education from their district. And, every single day we show up, we do the work. And now we're at a point now where we can show all of the little victories or all of the little issue areas that we're working towards in a way that, like, there's no way that a community member can come to us and say that, we lack information or we haven't been as transparent. Like, we're being as transparent across the board.
Through the chair, also something, Superintendent Sudaria, that you mentioned was about community members seeing our goals. And I thought about our community partners, and I think that we've also done work there and how our community partners have been working with us on this community action plan. And I would love to make sure or think about or talk about how our community partners, like, which part of our goals are they working with us on, right? Because I think the whole point of a community partner is to work with us, right? It's a partnership. Like, so I know for a long time, Ravenswood has been a project, right? It's been a project that folks have come in and said, oh, this is our project. This is my project. This is the project of how we can do this at your school. And I really want to make sure that the people who are engaging our students, you know, believe the things that we have about our learner profile and really want to partner with us so that they're partners with us and that we're not just a project. And so I really love this roadmap. I love these goals, and I really want to utilize it as we think about how we engage anyone who wants to work with us on our campuses, because it shows that we have a vision. We have a vision of success that everybody from the community, school districts, parents, teachers, students, kids, leaders, outside people who didn't have kids in our district too spoke to. And now we have a roadmap. So how do we all fit on this roadmap together versus a lane that's not there, right?
Yeah.
So just thank you. And I think that we have something that we can look at.
And I'll just share, if I may, just a couple of notes on that piece. I just want to shout out some of our partners who are already like in it with us. Ravenswood Classroom Partners is working in our classrooms doing the SIPS intervention program, which is one of our key results for language and literacy. Ditto for the Boys and Girls Club, who's starting to pilot doing that in the after school program and during summer. And I was just at a meeting with Dr. Miley at the middle school last week, where some of our Boys and Girls Club staff are excited to spend Monday mornings greeting folks who are coming late to school to emphasize the importance of attendance. So this really is a team effort. And even as we're thinking about hiring new teachers and staff to join us, the Ravenswood Promise is something that we're centering as well. So everyone knows if you're part of the team here at Ravenswood, this is the vision and this is what we're engaging in together. So really excited to be able to bring the community to get together around a shared purpose. Thank you.
We'll now move into item number 12, which is a consideration to approve resolution number SY 2526 regarding the elimination of permanent classified employee services.
Good evening, trustees. As you've heard from Dr. Eager for about the last 3 years, and as you'll hear later this evening as well, we've run a surplus and now we're running it down. The proposed reductions in front of you are aligned with our long-term financial plan of spending down the reserves that we've built up. We're asking for your approval for the reduction of the school support staff and makerspace tinkerer classified positions, all of which are vacant.
I will entertain a motion to approve resolution number SY 25-26.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. Whereas Education Code sections 45117, 45298, and 45308 authorize the Ravenswood City School District to lay off its classified employees for lack of work and or lack of funds, and whereas the governing board of trustees of the Ravenswood City School District has determined that as of the 30th day of June 2025, certain services now being provided by the Ravenswood City School District shall be reduced or eliminated to the following extent, and so on and so forth.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 3-0. I will now move on to agenda item 13, which is a consideration to approve resolution number SY 25-27 regarding the elimination of the permanent certified employee services 2.0 FTE. I will entertain a motion to approve resolution number SY 25-27.
Through the chair, I move to approve item number 13, the consideration to approve resolution SY 25-27.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Whereas Education Code sections 44949 and 44955 authorize the Ravenswood City School District to reduce or discontinue particular kinds of programs and services not later than the beginning of the following school year. Whereas the Ravenswood, as the governing board of trustees of the Ravenswood City School District has determined that as of the 30th day of June 2025, certain services now being provided by the Ravenswood City School District shall be reduced or eliminated, and so on and so forth.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 3-0. I will now move on to Item number 14, which is a consideration to approve the 2024-25 second interim financial report for Ravenswood City School District.
Good evening, trustees. I'm very pleased to introduce Jessie Latimeric, who's our new Director of Finance. It's not really new anymore. I think she was here for our first interim budget update, but she made me do it instead of taking it on her own, even though she had, I think, been here for a week at that point. So she has worked really hard over the last few months to put this presentation together, and more importantly, put all of the underlying data that goes into this. It's a lot of work to figure out how much we've spent so far in the year to date, compare it to revenues, and make sure that we're on track to complete our goals and planned expenditures. After this, we will be talking through the budget for next year. It was kind of a multi-part financial update that kicks off with an update on where we are so far. And with that, I'll hand it over to our new Director of Finance.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jessie. I am the new Director of Finance, as Will just mentioned, taking over for Reese, who's left some big shoes to fill, but I'm working really hard to get up to speed. And I'm really grateful to be with you all here tonight presenting our second interim budget update. So with that, I guess the highlight of tonight's presentation is our second interim budget is generally broadly similar to our first interim budget. We are projecting an additional approximately $1.1 million in revenue. We are also projecting an additional about $1.2 million in expenditures. So the net impact of these two increases is fairly neutral on our bottom line, and we are still anticipating running about a $2.6 million deficit for the 24-25 school year. This deficit, as you all know, is paid for through reserves that we've built up through what we're calling the stimulus era. And next, after we're done with this update, Will's going to take you through the budget for next year. All right, to give you a little bit more detail, we are anticipating an approximately $1.1 million increase in revenues due primarily to an increased Title I allocation and the addition of revenue from interest on our financial reserves. We are anticipating approximately $1.2 million in additional expenditures, resulting from, for the most part, an increase in maintenance costs resulting from our ongoing construction projects. As I noted, the net result of these two increases is pretty much budget neutral, and we remain on track to run our projected $2.6 million deficit. At this point, through the end of January, we have spent about 53% of our budgeted expenditures. Historically, at this time of year, we've spent about 50%. This slight increase is anticipated. As was reported at first interim, we moved our certificated 10-month staff to an 11-month payment plan. So we ran through money a little bit quicker in the beginning of the year than we have historically. At first interim, the gap between historical percentages and current percentages is about 5%. So the gap is decreasing, which is what we expected to see as the year progressed. Here's a visual of our multi-year spending plan. During the stimulus era, we built up about $15 million in reserves, which we placed in Fund 17. It's on top of our 17% economic uncertainty reserve. This is our second year of winding down those reserves, while at the same time, we have continued to invest in record amounts per pupil in our students. Our strategic spending has allowed us to avoid the significant cuts that would have come from not being so mindful about the way that those funds were invested and spent. So this visual shows you the red hashtag is the current year. You could see the green line is our projected revenue and the gray columns are projected expenditures. So right now we are in the deficit era where we're still spending a little more than we're bringing in. But as you can see, that green line continues to gradually grow and catch up with our expenditures and bring us back to balanced. All right, so school year 23-24 is now officially closed with the presentation of the audit at last board meeting. We are nearly done with school year 24-25, and we are well into planning for school year 25-26. He'll hear from Will next. He will present our draft budget for next year. And with that, this presentation is concluded unless you have any questions for me. All right. Moving on to Will. Did we change that?
We're gonna have to approve this, so I will entertain a motion to approve, 24-25 second interim financial report.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2024-25 second interim financial report.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 3-0. I'm now gonna move on to item number 15, which is a consideration to approve the 2025-2026 school plan for student achievement for Bellhaven Elementary, Costaños School of the Arts, Los Robles, Ronald McNair Academy, and Cesar Chavez Ravenswood Middle School.
Good evening, trustees. We're going to do the presentations for both the student achievement plans as well as the preliminary budget, and then we'll vote on those items consecutively. We do need the board to approve both the SIPSAs as well as a preliminary budget, hopefully today. So there we go. Okay. As Jesse just reminded us all, during the pandemic, as planned, we built up some significant reserves. We did this while also spending significantly more on students. We're now in our deficit era. The goal, as we've been saying since I joined the district, run surpluses and then run strategic deficits over the next as many years as we can to maintain those high levels of investments in students, but not make any rash decisions that have us move quickly off a fiscal cliff, results in dramatic spend down. So we are running a deficit. We do want to slowly close that deficit, but we want to do it slowly, carefully, and thoughtfully. We don't want to rush into anything. And that has been sort of our long-term financial mission for at least the last couple of years. This is the third year of the planned deficit. We started with a higher number. You should see that number start to tick down. We're around 2.3, a little bit over 2 this year. That's the goal. We're, as Jesse just mentioned, around 2.6 this year. So you're seeing us gradually, slowly tick down. Overall, expenditures look very similar to what they look like in this current year for next year. So we're still providing and still planning on providing compensation increases. We're still expecting things to go up, but we're able to reduce overall expenditures ever so slightly, mainly with the goal of trying to keep those sort of expenditures stable. The goal of today is to publicly present for preliminary adoption the budget for next year. We'll work to finalize the amounts and allocations. So exactly, you'll probably see some small changes between now and June. As we tighten up proposals, we get numbers from vendors, we get contracts underway for next year. So you'll see a little bit of movement. For the most part, we're hoping this is stable. We've also started to think, and all of this is in the appendices, but we started to think about exactly for each individual spending line, what grant should be paying for those things. And the whole big goal of this is for us to be able to make offers to staff right now. That's our goal. We're trying to begin hiring early. We want to be ahead of other school districts. We're going to be making early offers. We know that on average, the best talent is available now. So we want to fill every opening that we can right now. So all of this is really about hiring for next year today. Okay. Jesse just presented this graph, but just spend another minute on it. Ran surpluses, ran deficits, and we're heading back to balanced when the deficits have spent down those reserves. We have been presenting this slide for 5 years. I won't spend more time on it, but that is just the long-term financial plan of what we've been trying to do for the last 5 years. The process that we followed for this year was very similar to what we followed really for the last 2 or 3 years. In December, we forecast our enrollment picture. We look at how many students we expect each school to have. From there, we work to generate a per pupil amount that we apply evenly across schools. Budget owners then have a chance to revise, review their budgets from this year for next year. They do, during that, a lot of engagement at the site level in particular. make sure that parents feel good about that. One thing we're really proud of that I think reflects this engagement is for the first time in my memory, certainly, and perhaps longer, we do have the school site plans done, which is a huge accomplishment for our team that we're excited to share tonight. But that's reflective of the engagement that's happened here. After sort of late February, for the last week or so, the business office team has been working on compiling all the different budgets that we've seen. So we have to make sure that all the totals work together, the school budgets, the central office budgets, we're not double counting positions, we're not forgetting positions. All of that really gets done sort of between the February break. And from now until the board adopts the official budget in June is when we're allocating to specific funding sources, we're checking numbers, making sure that there's no mistakes, or as few mistakes as we can. The way that we allocate funds per school, as I just mentioned, is we come up with a dollar amount per student, and we come up with an estimated number of students per school. We multiply those together, and that gives the school their budget. Overall, the number of dollars per student has gone up at all of our schools. We're trying to make them as even across schools as we possibly can, with a little bit more spent at the middle school. We're trying to close the gap between the middle school and some of the other schools gradually over time. What we've seen at the school level, again, which is just a multiplication problem of dollars per kid from this table times the number of kids, gives them their total budget. You'll see some schools going up, you'll see some schools going down. That is not a function of how we feel about the schools, any reflection on how the school did. It is just a reflection on how many students they had for the most part. So schools that have seen a dip in enrollment, we expect to see a dip in funding, all things. The actual budgets and all of the details, I won't go into tonight. We do have the principals here to answer questions about them, but we will put everything up on our budget. The budget has line item level explanations about what everything is in very easily read plain English. We have not updated the website for next year yet. We will by later this month. And then we do have all of the sort of more in-depth documents available on our website. So full transparency on all of this. Okay, turning quickly just to the revenue side. We have lost pretty much all of the grants we know we're going to lose. So during the stimulus era, we got a bunch of grants. They had timelines. We knew they were going to phase out. We also received a large donation from the Peary family. That is expiring. So everything that we know is kind of disappearing has largely disappeared, with the exception of the community schools grant. So we think this is what our revenue is going to look like for the most part going forward. We know when the REF talent initiative ends and is replaced by the funding from the leases, we'll see the purple that represents rent and the green that represents REF sort of change relative sizes. But the hope is that that total bar looks relatively stable over time. These are our expenditures based on each department. You can see the schools there are in blue. And the sort of funds largely controlled by the central office are up here. You'll notice that those funds look a little bit bigger, but that's not really the right way to necessarily look at this. You'll notice, for example, that big red bar here, they're special education funds. Those are funds that are centrally budgeted, not budgeted at schools, but are pretty much all spent at schools. And we'll come back to that point in a second. As we mentioned before, the total expenditures per pupil during the stimulus era, we dramatically increased, both as we got new stimulus funds and we increased through the Ravenswood Education Foundation, increased the amount of philanthropic contributions. But we went from about 16,000 relatively stable to over 30,000, and we've maintained sort of a new plateau. Our goal is to maintain a new plateau. I would point out that when you account for student need, as I've said before, I think every year I've done this, when you account for student need, and I won't talk through the mechanics of the math here unless the board wants to. I know we've done this in the past. But when you account for student need, we are very much more in the middle of the pack. So even though our per pupil amounts have gone up, when you account for the need of our students, we were down here at the bottom. We are now much more solidly in the middle of the pack at this new level. We are, by a dollar per pupil amount, an affluent district. But if you look at the needs of our student population and compare those to other districts, we are very average compared to districts across the county. Speaking of where some of our resources go, we're spending more per student, but where is it going? As I mentioned a couple of slides ago, a little bit less than half right now is going into schools. The rest is on central budgets, but most of that is not really spent on central bureaucrats like me or the superintendent, right? Most of that is special education teachers. That is tech devices bought for schools. It's for our after school program contracts. EGCP is a centrally budgeted program, right? So a lot of those big contracts are in those central office budgets, but the central office people, the true central office expenses, my computer, me, my supplies, right? Most of my team, we're in this little green box here. We're about 10% of the overall spending. Still higher than I think many other districts, especially larger districts, but smaller than we've been. So we are reducing the amount of sort of central allocation as we spend more and more directly on school services. Similar to prior years, the vast majority of our budget goes to staff, mostly directly in the form of personnel, people. And some of the non-personnel I'd point out still is people, right? Boys and Girls Club, people, special ed contractors, people. But, you know, technically as we code them, they're not actual employees. And by salary, most of the people who work here are, of course, educators or people working in school staff positions. With a hefty number of them being maintenance, operations, transportation, or bus drivers, van drivers, custodians, maintenance staff. I'll sort of conclude this section of the presentation by calling up Katina Ballantyne, who has really led the charge here on a number of really impressive projects, not least of which is for the first time, I'm going to say ever, probably not true, but let's say the first time ever, getting our school site plans done midway through the year for next year. So this means that the sites have actually made their strategic plans for next year. I mean, it's been a real struggle just operationally for us in the district. It's something that Katina managed to do in her first year here with us. It's quite the accomplishment, and she is here to tell you all about it. So.
Good evening. And I think the timeliness of the ZIPSA is also in large part to love. Okay. So a ZIPSA should really be thought of as a school site specific strategic plan. So you will see when we go in later slides, it is aligned with the Ravenswood promise. You'll definitely see some commonalities, but this is a school site specific plan. So within each ZIPSA, you will see that there are annual goals paired with measurable outcomes. In addition to that, you will see specific and detailed strategies that are meant to reach these goals. You will then see that there's funding attached to each strategy. So you'll see that some of these initiatives are funded by federal funds and some of them are coming from our state grants. Okay, so the process for making a ZIPSA, it really begins with a comprehensive needs assessment. So what this is that site leaders go through and they look at local data indicators, and then they also look at things like the California dashboard to really identify what are their high priority needs, and also which student groups need special attention within their individual school sites. The next step from there is then actually creating the plan. So using those metrics to then kind of fine tune and iterate upon those strategies. So a strong ZIPSA is not recreated entirely from year to year, but it's really iterated upon, right? To reflect and say, what did we do last year? What should we change this year? And based on the needs of our students, what modifications should we make? Lastly, the ZIPSA is then run through teaching teams, the instructional leadership team at each school site, and also receives community feedback and partner feedback. So this is done primarily through SSC and ELAC meetings. And if you have questions for principals, they can also kind of share how they socialize their ZIPSAs at each individual school site. So once all of that feedback is taken, principals then internalize that and iterate upon their ZIPSAs for a final draft, which is what you'll see here today, or what you have here today. So if you look across each of our 4 school sites, you will notice that they have big strategic goals that are in common. And these are kind of our big long-term goals that are aligned with the Ravenswood promise, for instance, right? That big focus on literacy. But if you look at the fine-tuned details of each ZIPSA at each specific school site, you might notice that there is one particular school student group that has a special focus based on that school site's data. I will let the principals kind of take it away when it comes to explaining some of the differences and their school-specific strategies that they have at each site. But here, you can just kind of see a large overview, and you'll notice some of it's the same, but there are kind of nuanced differences, right? Where Castaño is addressing the arts component and how that is integrated. CCRMS is addressing more middle school specific items. And that concludes kind of our overall presentation on the SIPSA, and I will leave you all time to ask questions to our principals.
I'll wrap it up just by, we'll get there. I'll wrap it up just by that. That sort of concludes the presentation on both the SIPSAs and the budget. So we'll open up if there are any questions to anything else, but that'll conclude the SIPSA budget presentation.
Through the chair, just for the board's sake, the rest of the presentation, you see the itemized budget for each site and department.
Are there any questions?
Through the chair, this is like our questions for the SIPSA as well, right? Okay. Yes, I do. Well, one of the things, Katina, that you brought up during the presentation was socializing. I think that's what the word you used, but I would say sharing. How did you share? Like, what did that look like? So I'd love to hear. I know what it looked like at Los Robles, at least from the parent side, because I'm a parent there. So I would love to hear from any of the other principals. How did you share the SIPSA with your families, with your teachers, with your school community? And Alex, you can also share, since even though I know, the other board members probably want to know.
Way down. I'm wearing heels today too. I know. For Bellhaven, what we did was we went through and talked about priorities with our instructional leadership team before bringing it to our school site council, which we then brought, after we met with ILT, we brought it to our school site council and shared that and got feedback. I also put it out as a meeting for our staff, for all staff to join if they were interested, to provide feedback. And then we brought it back to the school site council again, to make sure that everything was good before we got approval. But we did go around a couple of rounds with everyone. Does that answer your question? Do you want something more specific?
I mean, sorry, I just have a follow-up question, because you said I sent it out to the staff for anyone who wanted to join. How many people joined, do you think?
I had a handful on one occasion, and then I had one staff member join at the official meeting.
Thank you.
Good evening. So similar to what Principal Matsuda said, we have a similar method in what our school site council and our combined ELAC do together when they meet, and then representing that to ILT and then bringing that back. One of the really cool advantages that I have in our school site council is that our Boys and Girls Club leader, Mr. Mike Vista, is part of my school site council. And so he was able to bring parents from BGCP, like folks that we have in program. So we had more and more parents to present to as we got to our last few meetings, where we were really sharing out the details of the reiteration of the foundational plan from last year and what was working and what wasn't working, what we thought needed to change. And so we actually got to get some really good parent feedback on that. And I also have Gabe Anguiano is part of my school site council team. So he also joins us. So we also get some additional kind of home office lens on some things that we're doing. And then we were able to circulate that out. And it was really good for feedback purposes.
Hi, my name is Rhonda White, interim principal at Castaño School of the Arts. I was like, do they want all of us or one of us? So I first got my budget and I talked to my VP so that she could see it. We could understand it. We could process how much money we had, what our priorities were, what we're going to do. Next, I talked to the coach and admin team, and we then further discussed what made sense, what didn't make sense, where should we spend our money. Next, I had it at a staff meeting where all staff were present, get ideas, help them go through the budget, see the various line items and the various things that we either have, potentially are cutting, are moving around, took suggestions, ideas, and thoughts. Then the following week, I went to grade level meetings. So if anybody was absent, anybody had follow-up questions, anybody needed more. Also, my VP has been doing an excellent job of holding SSCs and ELAC regularly. And so there, I did a presentation to the parents and ELAC members about the budget, the same thing that the teachers got. The parents had a big opportunity to ask questions, to give input on things that they would like to see. And then I went back to the staff and we furthered up on what direction we're going to go into and what makes sense. And then I followed back to the parents. They specifically asked for us to look deeper into an SEL curriculum. And so we're going in that direction as well. And then I think we're here. I got a couple weeks. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Alex Quesada, Los Robles Ronald McNair Academy. Very similar themes and trends with the other sites. Trying to get as much information out to parents so that they can provide feedback, tell us what they like, what they don't like, what they understand and don't understand, and then run it through our staff, through leadership team predominantly, and then bringing it back for another iteration. I think it could always be refined. I think every year we modify how we present the budget to our families and staff. One of the things we want to improve next year is really dig into some of the line items, which could be confusing for some, especially how and where the money comes from, the different grants, the different, whether it's a Title I bucket versus a general fund bucket. And I think those are things that we can probably explain to the community that we just have always kind of shied away from because it could be kind of confusing. So next year we're gonna take a shot at it and see if we can actually try to get that a little bit clearer to families and staff.
I do appreciate the Google form where I can put my feedback in. So thank you, Alex, for that.
Chair, I have a question. This is for each school site leader. Can you each highlight a specific goal and the strategy that you all are going to implement? Hopefully, each one is different from school site. Does that make sense?
So in goal one, focused around literacy and obviously big rock for the district as well. We're excited for two things that are included in there. One of them is our continued approach with Ignite tutoring. That has really been something from an intervention standpoint that has really elevated our children this year. And we have data to show that. And so now we're going to be increasing the use of Ignite, especially knowing that we have some sixth graders coming in next year that are going to need that level of support. So we're really going to be ready for it. And then additionally, we are making a shift in our electives area to where we are going to be providing Spanish class next year. So we're going to have Spanish, and we know that from a literacy perspective, if I'm a newcomer student and I'm in an ELD class and I don't already have my native language nailed down, that's going to make that English learning that much more difficult. So by supplying that Spanish opportunity, those students are going to have higher opportunities for English literacy. And additionally, our students are now going to have an additional advantage moving forward, similar to what we're able to provide with algebra. So for our eighth graders that can take algebra, we get to walk in the door in high school and start in geometry, which means we can get into an AP class, right? We can take AP calculus because we're going to be able to climb that ladder. Same thing is going to be true for Spanish. So I've already done these years of Spanish. I'm going to walk into a native Spanish class or a Spanish 2 or 3 class, and I'm going to get a shot at Spanish 4 AP. And so now I'm I've got another shot at college credit. It's not going to cost me anything after having taken this test. So we're excited about both those and how they connect to our Big Rock.
All right. So for Bellhaven, one of our biggest pushes is to try and figure out how to continue to move our newcomers and our multilingual learners to reclassify them. And what we've been starting to work on towards the end of this year and hope to continue for next year is we are working with one of our consultants from CORE. And because when we did our surveys through all of the staff, our empathy interviews, we found that a lot of the teachers were finding that it was providing access, that our students weren't able to access the text. And so we are really working with our consultant on how to make the text more manageable for our students to really gain an understanding and not just the gist of what's going on, but then diving into our tier 3 vocabulary and also still continue to work on our tier 1 and tier 2 vocabulary as well, which is what they would see more often and more frequently than the word evaporation, for example. So that's more specific. So we are really working on figuring out how to support all of our multilingual learners, but really be able to move our newcomers and also our 4s and 5s who are like almost there to being reclassified to cross to the other side, I guess, to actually reclassify them.
I'll stay in the realm of literacy. I know it doesn't maybe seem like a very unique goal because it feels like we're constantly talking about language and literacy, but what's specific and unique to us and what has been incredibly challenging over the last few years is because we're trying to develop biliteracy in both Spanish and English, and both are very, very important to our school's goals. Any kind of support that we need to provide has to include that staff that is credentialed and qualified to teach in both languages. And that has been challenging. And it wasn't until maybe I want to say last year, the last maybe year and a half, 2 years, that we were staffed well enough where we could actually implement, systematic intervention in a way that's looking like we can sustain it for the next 10 years. If this we can keep this model. And so that's what makes it unique for us. And so any kind of funding, anytime we look at our budget, we're always looking for that, right? We're always looking for highly qualified, credentialed teachers that can actually do this work. And then the materials and the supplies for that, right? And so that's always extra money. And so that's reflected in our SIPs and that's reflected in the budget.
Since I can't repeat, that leaves me with attendance. So we attendance goes along with District Big Rocks at Castano. We call them our small pebbles. We realize that language and literacy is a huge focus, but if the kids are not there, we can't teach them. So we looked at our data from last year or at the end of last year and realized we have an 87% attendance rate daily. And we know pre-pandemic, we were more like 95, 90% attendance. We know that most schools who have the 95, 96% attendance rate tend to fare better with their education and with their learning. So we began to put a system in place where we looked at school-wide attendance data, grade level data, and individual data. So we found out we had 40 students who were chronically absent every day for a variety of reasons. We had a number of students who were either coming late or leaving early. We also had, drawing a blank, 40 to 50 absences daily. We noticed that Mondays and Fridays were higher in absent rates, and we wanted to figure out what is it that we could do. So the very first thing we decided was the students who are chronic absent. is it a resource that we're missing and how can we help them? So we began the year with a positive letter home, talking about attendance, welcome back. We want you here. How can we support you? How can we help you? We also have created a PLC just for attendance where we meet weekly, actually bi-weekly, and talk about the attendance data. We look at it school-wide, we look at it grade level, we look at it individually, and we look at the number of absences that we have daily. On Mondays and Fridays, we have a Cougar Cash. We give a little more incentive for showing up. We also noticed on Wednesdays, our attendance tends to be higher. We figured out what's on Wednesdays. We have core value assemblies. We have recycle assemblies. So we have some things and some days when that's coming up. So we're really looking at school-based strategies on how we can approve attendance, which would then, we believe, also impact instruction. So that's our focus, is attendance.
For myself, I'm interested in hearing from the principals regarding your school plan in regards to your student achievement. How might you, or how are you measuring the things that might seem unmeasurable to the eye at first glance in regards to like student self-perception that I saw across the SIPSIS, and student belonging and connection to school. So how would you measure those kind of things that might seem unmeasurable? That makes sense.
So that's an excellent question, because that is such a critical component of everything that we want to achieve from an academic lens, right? Because if I don't feel like I belong somewhere, if I don't feel like I'm safe in the place that I go to every day, how am I going to want to engage in learning? And going back to what Swite was just saying right now, why am I going to show up, right? So we know that we can look at attendance data, and that attendance data will give us some reflection on that. But at the same time, we just, matter of fact, we will be doing this again tomorrow, but we were just doing our mid-year survey through Panorama with our kids in our social emotional classes and in the mornings on our minimum days. And because it's conference week, we have them all week this week. So we have more opportunity. I think we've got 77% of our kids done at this point, and we're hoping to finish that off tomorrow and really have all their voices heard. And the other thing that's been really nice is we've been spending time with our staff in discussing how important these surveys are. And we've been modifying the questions in partnership with the home office, so that we're asking questions that are really relevant to our students in that sense of belonging, safety, connection, et cetera. So that when we look at the data we're getting from the kids, right, we can actually look at that to help us target the things in our SIPSA. Because, like, for example, in our SIPSA Goal 2, belonging is a very specific component that we're looking at our outreach coordinator, culture coordinator, and how the events and the things that we're having with parents are reconnecting people. Before I came to join you all here at the board meeting, tonight was our late night conferences, and our gym was packed with parents. And that was wonderful because people are coming and connecting to the outreach that's being presented. And that's another way for us to sort of measure those kind of immeasurables, like how much are our families coming out and being part of what we're doing and being present, because then we know that we're doing things that really are impacting people, that they're enjoying and they feel connected to as well.
All right. Similar to the middle school, we are also doing our MOI sense of belonging and student culture surveys. So that'll be through next week for us, because this week we had conferences and we want to make sure that we're getting all student input. And hopefully it won't be raining, so we'll have a higher attendance rate as well. And then on top of that, we've already noticed that because we have a small group or a smaller percentage of African American students, we've been using Valeria, our DEIB coordinator. And so she's also able to help support by holding empathy interviews with all of those families and reaching out to them to gather more input, specifically around the sense of belonging with their student, how they feel like they're being supported as well. So we want to make sure that we are including everybody, and not just who are our bigger populations. We want to make sure that we're including all of our smaller populations as well. And then on top of that, we have our school culture coordinator who's touching base with our students regularly. And so I think a lot of the data is through empathy interviews because we're hearing how students are feeling through. And so he's been able to collect that data as well, more informally than formally. But seeing and hearing those conversations on a daily basis gives us a good idea of what's going on in the classrooms, how students are feeling, and what we need to change on or work on.
Also, I really appreciate the question because I think that's one of the things we often are grappling with. Like, how do you measure what seems unmeasurable? At least at first glance, right? And so I think about, for example, one of the challenges we had when we came back from shelter in place a few years ago. We were really curious about how the students felt about themselves as learners, and there wasn't really anything to like capture that apart from really interviewing every student one at a time. We focused on literacy at the time, and we wanted to see how they felt or saw themselves as readers, and their answers were definitely alarming. The bottom line is they didn't see themselves as readers, and so it became a measurement for us. It really showed us that we can capture some of these things. Asking the question the right way and then making time for that, right? It's really difficult to do that kind of survey or that kind of inquiry, that kind of empathy interview, if you will, without really taking the time and actually working with students, either in small groups or individually. We take a similar approach when we do our climate survey data. We, as much as possible, we try to do those in small groups or individually to really get a sense of what students are really feeling. Are they really understanding the question when we're asking them if they feel like they belong or if they feel like they're getting supported? Another way that we try to measure the unmeasurable or what seems to be difficult to measure is how are parents feeling when they walk into our campuses. And so again, we started with very like, well, she seems happy when she waved to me. Mom did, or dad came by and said hi to me, or dad was upset with me because of a certain thing, so maybe they're not happy. And so how do you then capture that? Or we think that particular family feels supported, but we don't actually know. And so we started asking those questions. Do you feel supported? How do you feel when you walk on campus? Leaving those anonymous so that we can hopefully get like very honest responses. And that's also that's really helped us and really tailored then how we respond. Do we need to offer more support to our families in places where we just didn't think we needed to?
Will you repeat the question again?
Yeah, I think my question was more about like how are you as a leader of your school site measuring like the unmeasurable when it comes to like student achievement in your school, self-perception, those kind of things.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I just wanted to make sure. Let's see. First one is we wanted families back on campus. From the pandemic, we haven't had the family input. For those of us who've been here more than 5 or 7 years, we've seen a situation where there's 200 parents at an event or there's parents volunteering in classes. And so one of the things we've been lacking, I think, at our site is that we haven't had that parent involvement. So what does that look like? What does that sound like? We do great for family art nights between the performances and the activities, but how do we get the parents back on campus? How do we get the parents to be partners with the school? And so we started with our SSC and ELAC. And then the other one I would say is you do not want to come somewhere where you feel welcome. So how do you approach people? How do people come when they come into your space? Is it warm? Is it inviting? So it starts from the people with the yellow jackets who are outside collecting our kids, city year. Next, the principal or the vice principal or the community outreach coordinator outside opening up car doors. Good morning. How are you, mom? How are you, dad? Have a little trouble this morning? Can I help you with that? So what does that look like? What does that sound like? Hey, have you been to your child's classroom? So how do we invite the community back into their space that used to be their space so that they understand it's still their space? And they are the ones who know their kids the most. So how do we get them back in school? I also think about understanding understanding data and how important it is. Data should drive everything. We might think something is unmeasurable, but everything can be measured some kind of way, some shape or form. But how do we get whatever data we get, whether that's a data talk, whether that's on a spreadsheet, whether that's from a survey, and how do we use that to begin to shape our next steps and where we're going and our instruction. So thinking about for us, like literacy, K2, attendance, what does TK2 look like? What does 3-5 look like? There's this huge shift, as parents and educators know, in maturity level, in academics, and SEL. So how do we make sure that our kids are getting that? And how do we get that data? I also think as a turnaround art school, understanding every child has the right to read and write, but sometimes it's that other creative side. I'm gonna use my left hand. My other creative side, that's what's triggered you your whole life, that's kept you going as those other skills kick in. So how are we allowing kids to express themselves and show what they could do through the arts, through the musical, through PE, through athletics, or through a science fair? How do we begin to express that? And I'm gonna say we having a science fair on Wednesday, March 26th, 5:30 to 7. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a comment and then I have a question. I think one of the things that I noticed was that a lot of the schools, when you talked about belonging and you talked about these unmeasurable things that can be measured, and so it's through surveys, I really appreciate that we're using our DEIB coordinator to come and to talk with our kids or families across campuses. I know that she was also at Los Robles at some point as well, like just introducing some of that sense of belonging so every kid can feel like they belong. And I just do want to shout her out. I know she's not here right now, but like, her being in the classroom and telling my daughter who's mixed, I'm mixed. And, we connect on ways when you don't feel like you belong in a place. And that was just a very powerful moment for my daughter to even be able to share, like, oh yes, this is an identity that I can talk about, and I haven't had space necessarily to talk about it yet. And so I think it is really important for all of the sites to make sure we utilize the staff that we have to bring them in. So whether it's your campus coordinator and your just even beyond the teachers, right? Because we know teachers are already doing so much, right? So making sure that we're bringing in those staff that we know are going to be able to impact kids and having them come in and utilize their skills, because I think it is so important. So that's my comment. And then my question is there anything that you decided, and this is kind of a sad question, but I would love to know, is there anything that you decided not to fund this year because of priorities or because of different restraints that you might have had on your budget that you want to share with us?
But just strictly based off of budgeting, we have had to shrink our mental health team because we had 3 counselors this year, 3 different avenues. We are going to have to shrink down to 2 next year. Only because of budget, but hopefully we will have more enrollment the following year once construction is done, and then we can pick another one as well.
Thanks, Michelle. I think you do still have your school-based mental health therapists in addition to the 2 therapists, the 2 counselors. Do you want to?
This year, we currently have our school-based mental health. We have somebody through Cassie, and then also somebody through the county with Star Vista. So a total of 3. And then next year we will have our school-based mental health, and then we will still be partnering with Star Vista from the county.
So when I don't see someone on campus next year, I can be like, Alex, you said no, but this is interim. It's fine. Okay. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
All right. Then with that, thank you for that. Really appreciate that. With that being said, then I will, entertain a motion to approve the student plan for, the school plan for student achievement for Bellhaven Elementary, Castaño School of the Arts, Los Robles, Ronald McNair Academy, and Cesar Chavez Ravenswood Middle School.
Through the chair, I move to approve item number 15, which is a consideration to approve 2025-6.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 3-0. We will now move on to item number 16, which is a consideration to approve the preliminary school year 25-26 budget for Ravenswood.
Through the chair, I move to approve item 16, which is the preliminary SY 25-26 budget for Ravenswood.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. I'll second.
Oh, yeah, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Motion carries 3-0. Now move on to item number 17. Superintendent's report.
Yes, I only have a comment here since we've had extensive reports this evening. I just wanted to extend my gratitude to the site principals as well as Katina Valentine for the work that you've all put into the school plan, the student plan for school plan for student achievement, the SIPSA, as well as the work that Jesse and Will have put in to ensure that our budget is prepared far in advance to be able to provide a clear plan for next year that's aligned to our community action plan. I think the responses that the principals were able to share with you is because of the extensive work that they've done to understand their data and to understand what money is allotted to them, which means there need to be clear lines of budget sent to them well in advance. They got it back in November before winter break. And most districts are not doing this type of advancement with their budget planning, which really puts us in a strong position to be very clear about what we are going to be focusing on and prioritizing. And Will has always mentioned that our values are reflected in our school budgets. And you'll see that our priorities around our literacy, language and literacy, attendance and talent are elevated in our SIPSAs that are already elevated in our community action plan. And I want to reiterate this because I know our site administrators hear this all the time. We have to be aligned with our vision and the actions that we take in order to achieve the goals in our community action plan. So hats off to the site administrators, Katina, Jesse, Will, thank you.
Thank you for that, Superintendent. We'll now move on to item number 18, which is a consideration to approve resolution number SY 2525 for board member excused absences. Is there a motion to approve resolution number SY 2525?
Through the chair, I move to approve resolution SY 2525, board member excuse absences for trustee Shabomaheen and president Nunes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Whereas education code authorizes that each member of the governing board of Ravenswood, trustee Shabomaheen, president Nunes, so on.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 3-0. All right, we'll move on to item 19. The next regular board meeting will be held on March 27th, 2025 at 6 p.m. and open session will be at 6:45. And now we will adjourn today's meeting. The March 13th regular board meeting is adjourned at 8:20 p.m. Thank you.